that ability to then reroute those creator fees is a really fundamental edge. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in crypto projects.
None of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by WAGMI Ventures or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Hey everyone, Benga here with another WAGMI Ventures podcast episode. Today we're thrilled to have Stephen Hess. He's the director of Metaplex Foundation. With a Stanford background in human-computer interaction and over a decade in tech and healthcare innovation, Stephen dove into blockchain in 2020, first shaping Solana's ecosystem before co-founding Metaplex in 2021. Under his leadership, Metaplex has evolved from a pioneering NFT protocol on Solana into a powerhouse, creating over 920 million assets. For anyone who is new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting builders, founders across crypto and AI. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. All right, let's get into it with Stephen. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Benga. Great to be here.
Awesome. All right. You've had a storied history in tech, but we want to hear more about your crypto journey. How did it all start?
So it actually started probably more around 2012, 2013, and studied symbolic systems, which is about information design across a number of different modalities. So language, art, mathematics, computer science, linguistics, and blockchains are a really fascinating form of information technology. So my first interaction with crypto was just wiring money to a Japanese bank account to get some Bitcoin at Mt. Gox, and then day trading Litecoin and Dogecoin on BTCE. It's funny now, Yako, who's on our team, has been like going back and forth with the Litecoin account on Twitter. So it's been a funny throwback week.
Nice. Yeah. Certainly very interesting since you started in the very early days. When you talk about Mt. Gox, that's for a lot of normies, like past or history that is just fuzzy or never even existed. But now it's all NFTs, it's all digital asset ownership, and then there's the role that Metaplex plays in all that. So how would you describe Metaplex's role in it and what you're trying to achieve?
So ultimately, and even thinking back to those early days, like there's been this project in crypto, which is how do you create general purpose compute and how do you layer meaning over block space? And while that might be a really abstract definition, that's effectively what Metaplex provides for Solana and the SVM. It is an asset protocol that creates meaning in block space for creating tokens, launching NFTs. And on top of that structure, we've been able to build now with thousands of applications, wallets, marketplaces, DeFi apps, the internet capital markets. These are permissionless markets for building new technologies, community financing, and bringing real world assets on chain so that they can trade between anyone that has an internet connection with just servers and software sitting in between it.
Wonderful. I think there's also like some news that you have to share with us today, right? Some new developments, some exciting things coming up with Metaplex.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, so this morning we launched the first on-chain auction with Exotic Markets, which is a Solana-based DeFi protocol. And our focus is really on asset issuance, launching new token projects and ones that are fundamental in orientation. So they're focused on finding product market fit, generating revenues, connecting those revenues to the token. But launching these tokens in the right way, where you're able to capitalize the product, you're able to generate liquidity, you can then build with your community, bring your community in early, whether that's through airdrops or claims or allow list periods as part of the token genesis. And so instead of many of these token launches where you don't know what you're getting, you don't know exactly what the token economics look like, there are huge blocks of tokens that are flying around being sold into the market, we provide a verifiably credible, transparent, auditable launch on chain on Solana that lets everyone participate on equal footing. So there are a few different launch mechanics. You can have a priced sale, you can have a launch pool, which is what Collector Crypt used recently. And then as of this morning, we launched the first mainnet auction contract, which is getting its first run in production as we're talking.
Wow, congratulations on the launch. I'm super excited. I think a lot of this still goes back to how you built from day zero, right? You've talked about Metaplex Core as a shift beyond traditional NFT standards to digital asset protocols. What insights from your time building Core and early Solana NFT do you think is playing into how you're building your mainnet that just launched?
It's a good point. In many ways, Solana started out as a DeFi project with that decentralized NASDAQ vision. But what took off in the beginning were NFTs and digital artists and on-chain communities. And that actually then created the social layer that has allowed for this rebirth of DeFi and RWAs on the network. And Metaplex has had a role in both since the beginning. In fact, when token metadata was first introduced, it quickly supported tokens as well as NFTs. And so it's 99% of tokens and NFTs that are created through Metaplex at this point. But we have seen a shift towards tokens over the last year. I think that's obvious to everyone. But we have a really healthy NFT space as well. And in fact, like Collector Crypt, which I just mentioned, is a great example of that, where you have Pokemon cards and Magic cards that are tokenized on chain using Metaplex, while also having a fungible token that creates the system and the economics around the marketplace that the community can buy into. And so it's, I think a lot of the really interesting creative work for us going forward is at the intersection of those two. And Core is our rewrite of that first Solana NFT standard. So single account model, 80% cheaper to mint, much easier to work with, and has now become that new standard for teams that are building on-chain assets. Portal's another great project that uses NFTs as part of their metaverse experience and asset economy. And so I think NFTs have been written off, but that's frankly just because of how much speculation was in the space. And frankly, now I think when you see things happening with NFTs, it's because teams are doing something interesting. And I think ultimately that's really healthy for the market and for founders that are trying to find what works.
Got it. Metaplex has always had no-code tools. It's transformed the way everyday creators approach Web3. Is there any sort of thinking around how you approach building today and giving non-techies a bit more control? Is there any way that you're still thinking about how you build to carry them along in the process, I guess?
Control is definitely a key principle in everything that we build. Metaplex started as a creator-centered protocol. How do we remove the obstacles that sit in between creator and founders and their communities and their customers? I think transparency is also really important to us. There are a number of different ways of setting up and designing incentives. And in fact, that's a creative space that organizations and teams should be able to experiment with and will be different for projects. But making sure that everyone understands the rules of the game, the mechanics, what are the incentives between the different parties, and helping coordinate that for the founder, allowing them to execute on a plan that provides that transparency and trust to the community is the core idea that inspires our work, including Genesis and what's to come in terms of building and removing friction for founders that want to take advantage of these new on-chain markets.
And in practice, how is Metaplex empowering underrepresented creators in let's say, emerging markets? Are there any particular metrics that you're tracking to measure true ownership impact?
We're proud to have a really global community. It's honestly one of the most fun parts about working in crypto is that literally anyone with an internet connection can plug in and participate. And we've developed relationships all over the world. We've had a chance to participate in Island DAO and Mountain DAO and a number of working with Super Team. We've done some work in Japan over the last year, running some experiments. We've started to see some interest from these global markets, not just in terms of founders launching projects, but also from the broader market that is interested in Solana and trying to understand what the Solana economy looks like. I would say that the most fundamental thing that we're doing in that respect is building the tools so anyone can launch on chain, can directly access this technology, and that ultimately creates a market that literally anyone can participate in. You don't need fancy credentials. You don't need to know the right venture capitalists or have gone to the right parties. You can make your case online. You can make your case by shipping great products and technology. And then you have a capital market there that's sitting to support it. So I think when we look back, kind of historically speaking, that's what Metaplex will be known for in terms of opening up the aperture of who can actually build and scale these large technology efforts and projects.
Hey, everybody. Quick thing here. We're excited to announce WAGMI Advisory, your home for all things fundraising, hiring, and partnerships. This is all about supercharging your project with the WAGMI network, consisting of over 20,000 executives, investors, and builders in crypto, all ready to come alongside your project to help it succeed. Get in touch at team@wagmiventures.io to learn more and figure out if WAGMI Advisory is the right fit for your project. Let's get back to the show. Also wanted to just talk a little bit about the Solana Metaplex relationship or interplay there. Is there any unique Solana magic, if you will, that you think sort of helped in how you've built Metaplex over the years?
Absolutely. Metaplex incubated a lot of the core technology built when I had a product at Solana Labs, and ultimately Solana is the fastest engine on the track. Like, it's ultimately proven that you can have a single state machine that's coordinating global markets that can flip NASDAQ. Vib has been posting recently like the flip NASDAQ countdown clock, and that's coming. And that's enabled by the fundamental performance advantages of Solana and the decentralization that the network provides. And so Metaplex has benefited tremendously from that. Like the cost to mint, the efficiency of creating large collections, the ability to run governance contracts and advanced auction mechanics like the one that went live this morning wouldn't be possible if you didn't have high performance, scalable global consensus. And so Metaplex really, I think, hopes to pick up from that and really make that technology as accessible to both developers and founders.
Outside of the fundamental build with Solana and that relationship there, one of the other things that we're beginning to see in the space is AI interacting with blockchains, with crypto, with AI generating assets at scale. Like, how is Metaplex preparing to integrate or regulate AI-driven creations potentially? Do you see like programmable NFTs as a key to verifiable AI provenance, for example?
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy you asked this question so that I can rant to you about it, because I think my team might be a little tired. But no, AI and understanding the cortex and like building machine intelligence like is the most profound shift in tech since the transistor, probably, maybe like electricity writing. So like I'm in that camp, I guess, just to sort of plant a tent pole. In terms of crypto, I think that there will both be a dramatic change to the way that we interface with blockchains and then also the way that assets are created. And so I expect that we'll be using fewer applications that are more consolidated through natural language. I think UI becomes generative and bespoke. And then I do think that trust and verifiability with blockchain can be difficult, right? A probabilistic model with keys to a crypto wallet controlling millions of dollars of assets is risky. And so I think there will be systems that will be like assistive systems for AI agents and bots. And I do think that increasing amount of volume and activity and transactions will flow through those automated agentic systems over time.
All right, switching gears here, Stephen, I want to just talk a bit more about your new product and Genesis and some of the features. What are you most excited about for token issuers on Genesis?
We've had a chance to kick off with some awesome projects. So DeFi Tuna with their Tuna token, sold $2.4 million worth of the token in, I think it was 4 minutes. Then Portals went live. They sold out within 9 seconds on chain. And then we had Collector Crypt, the cards token, that went live with a new sales mechanic, which is the launch pool mechanic, where over 700 individual wallets participated in the token launch. There's price discovery on chain. Everyone gets the same price. So no sniping, no front running. There's no way of rigging the token economics because it's all transparent. It's all on chain from the start. And so it provides a verifiably credible on-chain representation of the token when it launches. And then as I mentioned this morning, we have exotic markets going live with on-chain auctions. So really focusing on getting the TGE moment right. And we've been learning a lot as we've been going through this. So we've just had a chance to work with some of these incredible teams. And the goal there is to build tooling behind us as we move through it, and then use that to support the next founder that's launching on Solana and the SPM.
Awesome. That's awesome. And just so there's no confusion, how would Genesis differ from like platforms like Pump.Fun?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Pump Fun is an exceptional product. If you're launching a meme coin, or if you're a creator or a live streamer, like 100% we're pointing people to Pump.Fun. And they also use Metaplex standards for creating tokens. So every token that is created on Pump Fun is minted through the Metaplex protocol. And so we're excited to be able to support them as a developer platform and as an asset protocol. Genesis is really focused on the ICM segment. Like, these are projects that, and ICM meaning Internet Capital Markets, these are larger product-centered teams. These are networks that are launching their own network token or a protocol that has utility within their protocol. They may have vesting contracts or claims or airdrops. They want to customize the launch experience. Maybe they want to integrate it in their application in some fashion. And they want to be able to launch with on-chain price discovery, which has inspired a number of these mechanics like the launch pool mechanic and the on-chain auction.
Awesome. I think one of the other concerns when you talk about token issuances is ensuring fairness. I think you alluded to it earlier, but how do you guys manage or view on-chain liquidity allocation with DEXs in how you view or how you create fairer market supports post-launch?
The ability for a founder to launch on-chain and then take that ball of liquidity and move it to an aim that they are then monetizing as the LP provider is one of those fundamental edges for DeFi that is the reason why the on-chain markets will become the main stage. It provides another form of monetization effectively for the founder, where they're getting exposure to the economics of the trading ecosystem. And that's in really stark contrast to the status quo before that, which is that you would have to launch through a centralized venue. And this on-chain, and pay fees in order to do that. And these on-chain markets create a direct path for projects to launch. And then the DEXs and the liquidity monetization, and Pump has done a brilliant job of this. Bags has been experimenting with this as well. That ability to then reroute those creator fees is a really fundamental edge. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in crypto projects.
Yeah. And I think the space continues to mature and really replicate a lot of what you're seeing in the real world on chain, which is sort of like what ICM is driving at. One of the other areas that sort of comes up or comes to mind is compliance. And just thinking about what your approach, or rather the Genesis approach, is to compliance for these token issuers.
It's a really incredible time to be a crypto founder. We operated the last several years under like the anti-crypto army regime, where Secretary Gensler was, our chair Gensler was unable to clarify if Ethereum was a security to Congress. And now we have an SEC which put out a project crypto. We have SEC Chair Paul Atkins today talking about how capital can be raised on chain and how that's going to be a real path for entrepreneurs that are fundraising. And so we've been following Clarity as it's moving through Congress closely. We expect there will be some SEC rulemaking that will follow, that will fill in some of the gaps within Clarity. But we're in a world now where there will be clear rules. We will know how to issue crypto commodities. We'll know how to issue crypto securities. And Metaplex will provide the tools and information for founders to understand where those lines live and then be able to launch their products compliantly. And that there'll probably be differences there depending on the team's own jurisdiction and balancing act there. But that's the type of problem we're excited to solve, as opposed to what founders were faced with before, which was just kind of a blank stare from the regulators in terms of practically what it actually means to issue securities, both securities and commodities, and like what those trade-offs look like for builders.
Genesis is obviously innovative. I'll probably fall under what is now being called the on-chain token offering, so OTOs. You're probably more familiar with it than I am. But curious your thoughts on how you see this evolving, almost like from a roadmap perspective for Genesis over the next couple of years.
For sure. It's a simple thought ultimately, which is we're building blockchain technology so that we can have permissionless assets that are trading on these open ledgers. Like, we should also be launching the tokens on chain. And that also means pushing the commerce and the financing into open contracts, as opposed to putting founders in a position where they have to do private rounds with large token lockups that then end up hanging over the chart for some time. And that's also a best case scenario in terms of community alignment, because when you launch on chain, you're able to build a really large tent. And so with Collector Crypt, for instance, 700 people in this launch pool. And you saw it, like, after the launch, you had, it was like Pokemon cards on chain was the story of the week. And I do think that having that large group of people that are throwing in the beginning and really connect to the vision of the project or to the founders in a personal way, giving them an opportunity to have skin in the game. And this market to like early stage technology development has been completely kind of off the table as well. So I think it's a combination of, you get global access to capital markets. Anyone can plug in with an internet connection. You get transparency, like literally verifiable on chain, and you get the ability to align with your community. It's a form of community financing, ultimately, that allows you to align your incentives and the success of the project with the people that love it. And I think that ultimately is transformational. And I think what we're seeing now is really just the early stages. Like these, it's almost like the crypto kind of infrastructure teams and platform teams using these systems. But I think what we're ramping up for is for this to be the form of capital formation and collective action and building companies on chain, which is this will be this class of secure crypto securities that we'll start to see being tokenized as some of these laws and rules come into place.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that you talk about like capital formation there. I think Genesis certainly drops the bar or lowers the bar or barrier to entry for capital formation, which is really part of this whole broader ethos around social impact and financial inclusion. So certainly looking forward to what the evolution there looks like. What else in crypto excites Stephen Hess? I know we've talked a lot about like NFTs and Genesis overall, but I want to talk about what else is going on in the ecosystem that you think is really interesting.
We talked about AI already, so I feel like that itch has been scratched. No, I think there is a lot there, right? I think just in terms of software generally. But I would say the other trend in crypto that I think is really interesting right now are these like integrated models for L1s. So we're seeing like these integrated payment specific L1s, like Tempo being the latest, Plasma before that, Circle as well, announcing a chain. We're seeing that with Hyperliquid kind of vertically integrating on perps. And so I think that's like that. I find that to be kind of one of these interesting questions sort of playing out in real time, is the vision of the global state machine where you have this large pool of liquidity. And I will say, for launching new tokens, that's incredibly valuable, because you have all of these wallets that are active that can participate in these launches. And that's very meaningful. But then we're also seeing this trend towards like more specialized product categories. And this is like a push and pull attention that you see in lots of different markets. And I think we're seeing that play out in real time. So I've been following that, sort of seeing what some of these networks are able to offer. And I think that'll be one of the more interesting trends to watch. And I think ultimately there's a role for both. It's about kind of what benefit you can get from specialization. And does that overcome the network effects of having a larger activated capital base that can participate and doesn't need any additional onboarding?
Yeah, no, it's going to be really interesting to see how this all shakes out. Ultimately, I think it's just for the good of society and how we move value from one point to the other efficiently and affordably. Also very interesting to see is the developments around the proposals for Hyperliquid's stable. I think it's literally history in the making, and sort of in many ways how the crypto continues to redefine the way we do and think of financial markets today. But no, this has been incredible, Stephen. Really appreciate your time and you joining the show. Certainly look forward to the success of Genesis and to seeing you back on the show soon.
Thanks, Benga. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and give us a good 5-star rating and subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts so you can get all the latest conversations from the most interesting founders, builders, and investors from across the world. Thanks so much and have a good one.